Europe's largest nuclear power plant is again at the center of global safety concerns, as Russia signals the possibility to restart the reactors at the occupied Zaporizhzhia facility. To understand why this matters and how a civilian nuclear plant became a source of global risk, you have to go back to the moment it fell under military control. Before the full-scale invasion, it powered electricity to roughly 4 million homes under Ukrainian civilian control. On March 4, 2022, Russian forces seized the power plant, marking the first time in history that a functioning commercial nuclear power plant was placed under military occupation. We investigated what happened next, from the takeover of the plant to the repression of the surrounding city, and the unprecedented hazard created when nuclear infrastructure became a weapon of war. I'm Oksana Pokalchuk, the co-executive director of Truth Hounds, a Ukrainian human rights organization, and this is Photo Evidence. This is Zaporizhzhia, located in southeastern Ukraine on the banks of Dnieper River. Near the city of Enerhodar is the home of Europe's largest nuclear power plant. Enerhodar is not just the city beside a power station. It is a nuclear city built to operate and support the plant. This geographic concentration, a major nuclear facility, a purpose-built workforce city, and a single river system supplying cooling water is what made Zaporizhzhia both strategically valuable and uniquely vulnerable once the war began. From space, it looks orderly. There are 6 reactor units aligned along the Dnieper River, the vast cooling point, and water channels engineered to keep nuclear fuel from overheating. Before the full-scale invasion, these 6 reactors feed electricity into Ukraine's national grid, powering 4 million homes. On the evening of March 3, 2022, that changed, as Russian units moved towards Enerhodar and the Zaporizhzhia Nuclear Power Plant. For the first time in modern history, a functioning commercial nuclear power plant was taken over by an occupying army. These images show the immediate aftermath. Buildings damaged by shelling as fighting unfolded around the nuclear compound. Over the months that followed, these risks escalated. By August 2022, shelling had cut the last remaining power line connecting it to Ukrainian grid for the first time in its 40-year history. For the first time, the plant had to rely entirely on backup diesel generators to operate the safety system of its reactors and keep span the fuel pools cool, systems designed for temporary use, not prolonged operation, and in need of cooling water themselves when operating. The outage cut electricity to nearby towns, including parts of Enerhodar. This August crisis came after months of fighting that had already damaged other lines, leaving the site increasingly vulnerable. Even years into occupation, temporary grid disconnections continued, forcing reliance on emergency generators. Before the invasion, Enerhodar was a working city built around the plant. After the occupation, the plant stands in a zone of heightened risk where ordinary operations are complicated by military occupation and conflict. What happens here does not stay here. Nuclear risk is not contained by borders. Any accident at Zaporizhzhia could have consequences far beyond Ukraine. The plant sits on land that was once home to meadows, swamps, and forests along the Dnieper River. This map shows the area before the construction of the Kakhovka Dam in the 1950s, which created the reservoir that now feeds the plant's cooling pond. Control of this water, just like control of electricity, is now part of what makes this site so strategically and dangerously vulnerable. Public spaces, once serving citizens, were transformed into housing of mechanism of an occupying regime. And here you can see a sprawling network of 7 Russian detention sites in Enerhodar and its surrounding area. This former police station became the central hub of the detention and interrogation. Cells held specific categories of detainees, from pro-Ukrainian civilians and former resistance members of the Zaporizhzhia Nuclear Power Plant staff who refused to cooperate with occupation authorities. The first floor housed 3 detention cells, a metal cage, and 2 interrogation rooms where detainees were subjected to physical and psychological pressure. The second floor included glass cages in courtrooms and additional holding rooms to accommodate the growing detainee population. Conditions were harsh: overcrowding, poor ventilation, lack of proper sanitation, limited nutrition, denial of medical assistance, psychological torture, and physical abuse. Documented cases include at least 6 deaths due to torture at this facility. The Enerhodar Yacht Club basement, a riverside recreational facility, was converted into a temporary holding site. Detainees were confined in a damaged basement behind a metal door, often bound with industrial wire and exposed to extreme cold. At least one Zaporizhzhia Nuclear Power Plant employee was tortured here. The captors used psychological intimidation, leaving doors unlocked but watching every movement, punishing any attempts to escape. The former SBU, Security Service of Ukraine headquarters, was repurposed as an early detention center during the initial phase of the Russian occupation. Detainees were held in basement area on mattresses, while the upper floors were used for interrogations. Documented evidence confirms that civilians were subjected to inhumane conditions, and at least one incident of conflict-related sexual violence occurred at the site. Detention extended beyond Enerhodar. Civilians were also taken to facilities in nearby districts, including the Kamyanka-Dniprovska temporary custody isolator. The floor plan reveals a highly structured facility: an interrogation room, 5 cells, a video surveillance post, and reinforced security measures. Detainees were held in extreme overcrowding, with up to 21 people packed into cells and forced to sleep on the floor. Poor ventilation, extreme heat, and lack of medical care caused severe suffering. FSB operatives interrogated detainees, coercing them into cooperation and obtaining Russian citizenship, while guards used psychological threats, including being sent to the Russian front line. At least 226 civilians from Enerhodar have been held in Russian-controlled detention sites, with at least 78 Zaporizhzhia Nuclear Power Plant staff specifically targeted for their refusal to cooperate with occupation authorities. But detention was only one instrument of control. As psychological repression became routine, the occupying authorities expanded their leverage to the system that sustained daily life. Control over people was reinforced by control over energy. In a city built around a power plant, electricity itself became a tool of coercion. Following its occupation, Russia rapidly moved to sever the plant from Ukraine's grid and connect it instead to Russia. Satellite imagery shows the deliberate construction of a new electricity line linking the Zaporizhzhia Nuclear Power Plant to Russian-controlled networks. Satellite imagery from 15 April 2025 documents early work on the line. 7 May 2025 imagery highlights the section near the village of Azovsky in Berdyansk region of the Sea of Azov. This approximately 8 kilometers stretch with 30 pylons is strategically significant. It creates a direct control from occupied Ukraine territory to Russia, bypassing Ukrainian grid control. This ensures uninterrupted electricity flow to Russia-controlled areas, while leaving Ukrainian regions increasingly vulnerable to energy deprivation. 22nd of May 2025 imagery documents an additional 15 pylons and over 5 kilometers of new line, indicating rapid expansion. This network not only delivers electricity but cements operational control, making the plant and surrounding region depend on Russian-managed power systems. Power is redirected to Russian-held areas, cut off from civilians, and used to keep the nuclear plant running under occupation. Satellite imagery from June to August 2025 shows the Zaporizhzhia Nuclear Power Plant's 6 reactor units and critical cooling water inlets, including the new sandbars, dams, and spray system designed to manage water flow. These cooling systems are essential to prevent reactors overheating and protect spent fuel pools, reflecting the International Atomic Energy Agency's 7 pillars of nuclear safety, which require multiple safeguards to function simultaneously. Under occupation, control over these systems is not merely operational. It determines where reactors remain stable, whether emergency measures are sufficient, and whether any restart could be conducted safely. Disruption, modification, or neglect of cooling infrastructure elevates both local and global nuclear risk. The system of detention in Enerhodar did not operate in isolation. Not all responsibility for such crimes require physical violence. International law recognizes aiding and abetting when an actor knowingly enables, support, or facilitates crimes committed by others. In Enerhodar, this includes institutional and corporate actors whose cooperation helped sustain the occupation's detention system. Among them was Rosatom, the Russian state-owned nuclear energy corporation responsible for operating the Zaporizhzhia Nuclear Power Plant during the occupation. Rosatom representatives did not operate cells or conduct interrogations. However, interrogators were at times accompanied by Rosatom personnel, and their continued presence coordination with occupation authorities. An operation of the nuclear plant under military control materially stabilized the occupation regime. By maintaining plant operation despite arbitrary detention and abuse, they contributed to the conditions that allowed those crimes to continue. Other crimes were committed through co-perpetration, where no single actor acts alone. At the highest level, FSB representatives directed interrogations, intelligence gathering, and coercive pressure. Occupation police leaders and military personnel enforced detention, controlled facilities, and tortured civilians. At the lowest level, guards carried out day-to-day confinement, abuse, and intimidation. Each level depended on the others, and a system international law defines as joint control over the crime. Zaporizhzhia is not an isolated case. Russia's state nuclear corporation, Rosatom, operates projects in dozens of countries, spanning Europe, Latin America, Africa, Asia, and the Middle East. This map highlights the global footprint of Rosatom as of 2023, showing how deeply the company is embedded in the international nuclear sector. Operations at Zaporizhzhia under occupation are therefore more than a Ukrainian issue. They set a precedent for how state-aligned nuclear corporations can operate under military control in territories subjected to control and coercion. International institutions like IAEA play a critical role in monitoring nuclear safety. The head of IAEA, Rafael Mariano Grossi, confirmed his candidacy for the position of UN Secretary General. Engagements between the IAEA and Rosatom leadership underscore both the complexity and fragility of oversight when state nuclear companies operate in politically sensitive or military contested zones. The Zaporizhzhia case demonstrates that even globally sanctioned oversight mechanisms can be challenged when a nuclear facility is effectively under the control of an occupying force. The Zaporizhzhia Nuclear Power Plant sits at the intersection of war, corporate responsibility, and global nuclear safety. Cooling, infrastructure, and electricity control have become tools of coercion, weaponizing a facility designed for civilian energy production. Detention and coercion in Enerhodar illustrate how occupation regimes rely on complex, hierarchical system of control, with legal responsibility extending to those who enable and stabilize such systems. International stakes go far beyond Ukraine. The global nuclear community must reckon with the implications of corporate and state actions in conflict zones, as safety and legal standards are at risk.